Right, good evening, everybody. We're now live. So end of term stops. Right, okay. Welcome to members of the public and good evening, everybody. We're now live. Right, welcome everybody. Good evening. Welcome to members of the public and councillors here or online. In the event of emergency, there are no practice alarms planned this evening, but if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall or going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street, then to the car park behind the town hall on St Ronald Street. In the case of any disturbance which requires the cabinet to withdraw from this room, either between us or others, councillors should withdraw to the Mayor's Park using the doors behind me and await further advice. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet on the council's YouTube channel, also be available to listen to afterwards. Use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras by visitors, is welcome, but you're requested to use them discreetly, to set them to silent, and to not use voice or camera flash functions. Speakers are reminded that microphones are to be used at all times. Let me introduce the work of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is the main executive body of the council. It's responsible for day-to-day decision-making on all council services and makes recommendations to full council on major policy issues and on the council's budget. Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of whom is responsible for a particular range of services. I'll introduce myself and go to my colleagues. And I have apologies, incidentally, from Councillor Luxford Vaughan and from Councillor Steph Nissen. So my name is David King, leader of the council. On my right.
Councillor Adam Fox, deputy leader of the council, portfolio holder for the local economy and transformation.
Good evening, Councillor Mark Corey, portfolio holder for resources and ward member for Wivenhoe.
Martin Goss, waste and neighbourhoods, Mile End ward.
Pam Cox, culture and heritage portfolio holder.
Julie Young, housing and communities portfolio holder.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager. Andrew Weavers, Monitoring Officer.
Pam Donnelly, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Pam. Item 2 is urgent items.
There are no urgent items, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is declarations of interest. I invite Cabinet members to so declare. There are none. Item 4, the minutes. I want to say a public thank you to Richard in particular, but to all the Democratic Services team, because if one reads through those, it's a marvel of concise recollection for conversations which aren't always any of that. So thank you very much. You know, it's a great job that you and your colleagues do, and it really is appreciated. To write so well into the public record is a really great thing to do. Thank you. Okay, item 5, have your say.
Chair,
I beg your pardon.
Chair,
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
Thank you. We should. Well, the minutes are referred for approval only. Are we? Thank you very much. So carried away in the thanks to fulsome thanks. There we go. Item 5, have your say.
we have Councillor Lilly under the general purpose.
Okay, thank you. Mike, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
We can, Mike. So if you know the form, you know the unlimited form for you. So off you go.
Thanks, Lon. For some reason
off you go.
My video has stopped working. First of all, can I just say that congratulations to everybody involved in the King's visit yesterday. I couldn't be there, unfortunately, myself because I had to go somewhere else. But from the look of it, looked for a fantastic day, and well done to you and everybody else involved in it. It'll go down in a piece of history. So congratulations. Anyway, that's the nice bit. And now I'd like to move on to the high flooding, please. It's been an awful long time now, a few years, and a lot has been said within the papers. We've voiced our opinions about where we are, what we're supposed to be doing. But we don't appear to be getting anywhere whatsoever in resolving the issues of stopping the flooding because it floods every year, every month now, and it started again already. We do have a temporary measure that we could put in place, and that's to put the pump in. And that will help all the businesses along there. It will help motorists going backwards and forwards. We have 50k from a developer from down there, which officers got through the 106 money. And now all we need is the rest of the half gathered from everybody else involved in this. The fire service could look after the pump. They could pop along when it does flood, do their usual professional jobs. They can even use it in other places that needs doing. But I believe that all the other measures that everybody's talking about is going to cost millions and millions, and it's going to take 2 or 3 years to even try and resolve. In the meantime, it will continue to flood, causes businesses to leave. Now, can I ask either the chief exec or the leader of the council to take charge of the task and finish group? Can I ask him to ask all of those people involved to help contribute the other half of the 50k towards the pump, to put it in place to help resolve this matter? And then we can look at whatever is causing it. And we all know it's such a complicated business. But can I ask either one of you to talk to Environmental Agency, Anglian Water, Essex County Council, Colchester City Council, the Harbour Master, and all the others? All of them, highways especially, all of them could easily make up that 50k, buy the pump, and then at least we've got something in place. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I'm going to sort of split the reply up, I think, between the three of us. We'll keep it brief and happy to follow up afterwards. First of all, thank you very much for the remarks you've made about the success of the King's visit yesterday. That's generous of you, but absolutely, from what I can tell, shared by many. So thank you. It was a great day. It took huge work, and it has left a real spotlight on the city for good. So, and a memory and three for many. So thank you very much. In terms of the high, that we ought to just sort of say for the record, the task force was not ours. We were an active contributor to it, both in thought and officer time. But you will know that the responsibility doesn't rest for much of this, doesn't rest with us. But absolutely, we have to have an interest in this. We do have an interest in this, and those things that rest with us, we have picked up. So I'm sure that we would be content, all of us, to see what we can do to refresh it, but it won't be what it was. It will depend on whether the MP wants to play a role. I'm sure he will have an interest in what the state of the play is, but I absolutely get your point about our responsibilities and what we might do. I'm going to ask the chief exec for a review, and I'll go to the deputy leader. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mike, for your question or your challenge. Perhaps I should put it that way. You may or may not be aware that we're starting to adopt a slightly different approach in the council now, certainly amongst officers, in the way we tackle intransigent problems, and this is clearly one of them. I think this potentially lends itself to that very different approach. Oh, okay. Well, so for the record, I'll continue, and then I'll take an action to speak to Mike personally tomorrow. So where was I? Yes, a slightly different approach that brings together a range of partners, both externally and internally, to tackle a difficult, challenging problem. And this is clearly one of them. So I will certainly undertake to review where we are at the moment, talking to officers and partners with a view to trying a slightly different approach to tackle this one. And I'll do that obviously in conjunction with the portfolio holder and the leader. And Mike, if you hear the recording later, I'll be in touch.
Thank you, Pam. Adam.
That's very much appreciated, Pam. Thank you. And I think you're right in saying that the bulk of the problem here doesn't lie as a responsibility of the city council, and that's been part of the problem all along, because I think that people have been coming to the city council looking for a solution, and we haven't been able to deliver it. But what Mike has said, and as a ward colleague of his, I'm well aware of the issue as well. I think there was some real progress made at the start with the task force, got the right people around the table, and I think it helped to identify exactly what the problem was and what the solutions could be to it. I think it's been a little slower going away and acting on those solutions, but we are aware that ECC prepared a business case to the Environment Agency for some more works around the valves there to prevent silting up. And we know that there's £100,000 of Environment Agency grant set aside to do that. Mike also said that, of course, we have had an allocation of Section 106 funding from development at the Hythe, which could also be put towards some of the works here. And of course, that is the benefit of having development, is it can help to some of these problems. And I think that hopefully that could be put towards the funding for the pump that people also want to see to resolve the issues when there's a high tide and the spring water gets stuck in the system and on the road. So thank you very much, Pam, for agreeing to go away and take that on. I think one of the problems with the task force has been that once the councillors requested all those agencies around the table and the MP managed to convene that, it is not a it doesn't have statutory powers to get those agencies to undertake the work and in the speed that residents and businesses down there want it to happen. So I've always been of the case that of the feeling that those task force meetings should have been more regular and held and done more to hold some of those agencies to account. And I'd certainly request that the MP convene another one at the earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Julie.
I don't want to delay this too much, but I just think it's part of a wider problem down at the Hythe, and it comes back to historical issues around non-adoption of by Anglia Water of the drainage system down there, and these things are always really complex to resolve, but resolve them we have to try and do, and the money I think that's set aside, the 50,000, I think came from the Beyond the Box application, and although they had absolutely cast iron guaranteed that their development wouldn't add to the flooding problems, they did set that money aside in the 106 agreement to help find a solution for the Hythe. So in goodwill, that money was set aside to find a solution. So I think it is beholden on the parties who are involved, and that's an Environment Agency, Anglia Water, and the County Council actually as a responsible authority for flooding to actually try and navigate a solution, because there is some money set aside there that we should be taking advantage of. I didn't want to, take too long on it, but I think it's important for us to air that in public where we are with this.
Unless there's anything else, I'll close. We'll leave this with Pam for the next steps. I think it is a reminder, and my thanks to Councillor Liddy for raising this publicly, that we have been, because of the nature of the challenges and the multi-agency approach and the leadership role played by the MP, we have ourselves been fairly quiet about this, because it's been work in progress, largely not seen, and it's been slow. And for the long list of all the bodies involved, that's unsurprising. So I think there is something for us to also take away, that when we've got ourselves clear about the next steps in engaging the MP as appropriate, because we will do this in partnership, then we should make sure that we're letting members and the public also know what we can say about where we are and what comes next. Pam, is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay, well, for Mike, thank you. If we do get to the record, I know you'll follow up. Item 6, decisions reviewed by the scrutiny panel. I know we've got speakers on this. Councillor Willits, Councillor Lissamore, Councillor Smith, in that order, you're all very welcome and you know the form, and we'll be guided by officers if we forget it. So, Dennis, please do join us.
Thank you, Leader. There was a call into the scrutiny panel in regard to the executive decision to suspend or cease the Saturday household drop-off service. The scrutiny panel is the critical friend, I hope, that's what we're certainly told in the scrutiny training, of the cabinet or the decision maker. And we try to suspend our political view, although those of us who had a lifetime in the civil service have managed to do it, others do it with a perhaps lesser degree of success. And our prime objective is not to say whether the decision is right or wrong. That is the prerogative of the cabinet or portfolio holder, but to say whether the decision complies with the constitution, is in line with the strategic plan and the budget which have been approved by council. So that is the function of the panel in regard to this call-in. Having heard the speaker on behalf of those 5 councillors who had asked that the matter be called in, and having heard the response from Councillor Goss, we had 2 recommendations to cabinet. The first was on the matter of consultation, and certainly it's our view that the council puts in a lot of time and effort to ensure that there is good communication between it and the residents of the borough. And reciprocally, most residents of the borough consider that the council is a good achiever in terms of telling what is happening and what decisions have been made and what the impact is. A lot of time goes into consultation, Leader. However, on this particular decision, our feeling was that in the decision notice, it said there will be no no consultation has been carried out. There will be no consultation on this decision, and that is the decision of the portfolio holder, of course. The response of the panel was there perhaps needs to be a cabinet policy on consultation, particularly on the second tier of decisions which are not going to have very significant impact on the majority of residents in the borough, but nevertheless they are important matters, and there should perhaps be some guidance on sort of materiality limits on just how important a decision is before the decision is taken to suspend all consultation, because consultation is seen as one of the 10 significant good decision features in the constitution. And casting our minds back, we could think of no guidance from cabinet or council or no policy on just what decisions should have consultation and what should not. Now, you might well argue, Leader, that this is a matter of common sense, and we're all grown up and we can decide on the hoof where consultation is needed. But occasionally there are going to be differences of opinions, as there was on this case. So the first recommendation is that Cabinet might perhaps think about whether there should be a policy which indicates when consultation should take place and just how insignificant a decision needs to be before the portfolio holder would normally say there is no consultation, will be no consultation because it affects such a small number of people and the service is so insignificant. Between the major decisions and the very minor decisions, there is a grey area where we felt there needs to be some clarity. The second point on which we made a recommendation to Cabinet really is on the side effect of decisions. And in the case of suspending or ceasing the Saturday drop-off service, we felt that there will probably be an unintended consequence that fly tipping may increase. It may not increase. We don't really know. And what was missing out of this decision was the portfolio holder's analysis of, if the principal decision of stopping this particular service is taken, whether it would have impact on any other aspects, such as the neighbourhood services teams having to do extra work to clear fly tipping. We don't know what the answer is to that, because that was not really a matter for the portfolio holder to decide, but we felt that the decision was deficient because no information was reported. Even if analysis had been done, it was not reported excuse me, in the decision. So the second recommendation specifically to this decision was the analysis of whether there will be unintended consequences, namely increased fly tipping or other activities which will be necessary because this decision has been taken. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I'd like to hear from colleagues so that we have a rounded picture, if you don't mind, and we can give one reply. But I just want to say before you go back, and you know this to be true, or at least I hope you do, we absolutely do take the role of scrutiny seriously, and we respect what you and your colleagues do to provide the appropriate challenge as you've described. So thank you for that on behalf of the panel and yourself. But can I ask the next two speakers, please? Come forward. Thank you. I think that's Councillor Lismore on Zoom. Hello, Sue. Welcome.
Hello there.
You know, out. Now over to you.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to add very much more than what Councillor Willets has said. However, with regard to the decision being made, because there has been no consultation, we do not know what the consequences are. And the consequences of fly tipping could very easily eat away at the saving that this service is, the abolition of this service is actually going to make. The residents who actually use this service do need to be asked, what will they do as an alternative? If a number of them turn around and say, we don't know, then I think from a don't know, because they're not going to admit to fly tipping, I think if they turn around and say, we don't know, we do not have access to a car, then I think we need to be extremely concerned that the amount of money that this service will save will actually be eaten up by additional fly tipping collections. I think we also have to take into account the charging of garden waste, because we do not know how many people are going to take this up, and we do not know what the impact will be. It could be that if our most vulnerable residents who cannot afford to pay for their garden waste to be collected, and who do not own a car and do not have easy access to the recycling site at Shrub End or elsewhere, may actually have used this freighter service far more than perhaps they would have done in the past. So I think we do need to do some consultation. We do need to find out what residents who use this service would do as an alternative. And we also need to see what the impact of the charging for the garden waste would be on the service. So thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.
Well, thank you, Sue. That's appreciated. I'll go to Councillor Smith of Maypole. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I'm here to represent the minority view on the scrutiny panel. I'm afraid, in my opinion, this was a very, very poor piece of scrutiny. For a start, the panel divided on party political lines, which is never a good sign. Secondly, the meeting was not conducted in a conducive manner. The key point on consultation was very well covered by the portfolio holder, who pointed out that only 1% of the population use this service. And it's therefore very difficult to identify that 1%, particularly as that 1% is no means constant from year to year. For example, if you were to wish to contact 100 people who use the service, you would have to contact 10,000 residents. So in this case, it was a very difficult one. These residents are not in a geographical area or in any other easily identifiable group, which made it very difficult to do an effective consultation. And I think the point was well made by the portfolio holder that that was one of the difficulties. And turning also to the questions which we were put, I myself asked how the county council had dealt with this in the closure of the Shrub End site. The chair refused to allow Councillor Lissamore, who was quite willing to answer that question, to do so. That would have enlightened the committee so we can have something to judge against. Against another service which is used by a relatively small number of people. We were left in the dark as to what was gone on there. So I have a feeling that this was a very poor piece of scrutiny, and I'm afraid that the report that has come towards you tonight does not accurately reflect the situation that we were in when the committee put it together. So I would ask you to bear those items in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. That the alarm bell there was not for you, I hasten to it. Might be for me. Councillor Judy Young first, then a couple of marks from me, and then I'll go to Councillor Goss to walk us through.
Yeah, I suppose for me, it's just a sort of governance question really about whether we do have any standards set in terms of the burden of consultation. And I don't know the answer to that. Maybe the chief exec might be able to help us with that, or the monitoring officer, because I think that would be helpful to understand. I hear the points that has been made by the contributions tonight, but it is a policy thing that perhaps we do need to have in place.
We're fortunate in Colchester, Julie, as you know, to have some real research and insight expertise. And both of the individuals have a lot of experience in consultation. I'm not aware of a policy. I'm not aware of any guidelines, but I am tempted to agree with you that there should be to give guidance on occasions such as this. My own view is that in the past it's been left to judgment, and there's nothing wrong with judgment until it gets called into question, as it is this evening. So with your agreement, leader, I'll take this back to the research team, see if good practice exists elsewhere, and if it does, we'll simply borrow it and put it in front of you as a model for Colchester.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Judy. I think from my perspective, it's been a useful conversation. It's a reminder to us of the point just raised, Judy. Thank you, and which Pam will pick up, on which we'll ensure we bear in mind in future such occasions. And there's always something for all of us that when we have something that may be sensitive or may have an impact or may gain not just a headline, we have to try and look past that, but could have implications for others that we have to perhaps spend extra time. We've been very thoughtful as a cabinet with our officers, best we can be, and we consulted widely on the overall packages. This is an important sub-item, and back to one of the points that was made earlier, of course, its delivery is one of those many steps that we have to ensure happens to ensure that we meet the budget challenges that have been set for us, come with the tide of time this year, and which we've largely, as a cabinet, with the support of full council, managed to absorb, at least for the year that lies ahead. So I'm sort of comfortable we can take some learning that's not the same as is acknowledged, accepting the recommendations, but there is some learning to take, and we'll do that. I'm going to ask Councillor Goss to walk through his views on the points made and also the next steps.
Okay. In terms of the household drop-off service, in 2022, it operated over 24 weekends at 45 community locations across this city. And on average, across 4 vehicles, bearing in mind this covers black sack waste and also garden waste, we crewed out those vehicles, and we had on average across 3 locations. So these vehicles call at 3 locations on the Saturday morning, normally within a ward or nearby, and on average 120 people from 3 locations in a ward use a couple of dust carts. In terms of tonnage, an average dust cart holds round about 10 to 12 tons of rubbish. The average load that we collect from an average Saturday, when we use the freighter service, we get 3.66 tons of black sack waste. That could include furniture, that can include plant pots, it can include other items that will go straight to landfill. And in the opinion of staff observations, etc., a lot of that stuff could be recycled quite happily at one of the recycling centres. So that's just a point to bear in mind. So just to repeat, we collect 3.66 tonnes of waste on average and 1.08 tonnes for garden, bearing in mind that this is a 12-tonne lorry. So potentially we're filling 1/12 of that lorry garden waste, bearing in mind that everybody currently has access to the garden waste collection service, and 3.66 tonnes, which is about 1/4 of a dust cart capacity. And bearing in mind that this is several vehicles as well. Okay. So I just wanted to put those figures out there because I think that's really important, because that would have been used as part of the judgment on how this decision was come to. And we used the word judgment, and that judgment is my judgment, along with officers and along with the report. Now, Cabinet will have received the papers, so I don't need to walk you through the decision notice, but I would just ask you to bear in mind that in the budget, this was there in the middle of February. We all voted on this as a cost reduction service, along with some other reductions in the frontline services of neighbourhoods, and this was adopted by full council. So this isn't a surprise. This is one of the cost savings that was proposed that will deliver just over £25,000 of cost savings. Now, there was a whole host of reasons why the scrutiny panel called this in, or at least Councillor Lissamore did, and this was fully scrutinised for well over an hour on a Friday night, and I think I gave a fact-based and robust response to the decision being taken. There is currently, in terms of facts around fly tipping, the figures quarter on quarter between this year and last year are down by about 20%. So fly tipping is actually reducing at the moment. And we also have a new company coming in called Wise, who is known about and will be communicated about more publicly shortly, where we're taking a lot more action on enforcement around people that litter across the city and also people that fly tip. We are stepping up a gear and we're bringing in external professional expertise to help us with that, an extra resource, absolutely no cost to this authority. But that's a separate issue, but it is linked. Because there's been comments made that fly tipping will increase, but nobody has been able to provide any figures. They've just said it will increase. So is that one black bag? Is that an old table being left by a bin? Now, the other thing, of course, to bear in mind, as I said earlier, a lot of the stuff that ends up in the back of dust carts could be recycled. So it could go to charity shops, and many good charity shops, Emmaus or organisations that recycle them to people that need furniture, that have just moved into their new house, that have a low income. Charities like Emmaus service that need. So some of the stuff that's going in the back of dust carts could go through that route free of charge, and they will pick it up. All you've got to do is phone them up or go online to book it. And then there's other great charities such as St Helena Hospice, the British Heart Foundation, the list goes on, where some of that could go. Now, of course, the right place for it to go is the recycling centre. But yes, there are some people that don't have vehicles. However, people have friends and family. They could ask friends and family to help them take items to the recycling centre. There are also low-cost waste carriers that are properly licensed that can also pick up waste in a big jumbo bag for 30 quid as well. So there are other options that we've obviously looked at. We're not advocating which waste carriers to use. That's a free market and that's for people to choose. So all this was carefully analysed. You know, it wasn't just a budget saving issue. It's a case of how much of the population, in fact, it's not even 1%, you know, 120 people over a number of weekends times 45, you can do the maths out of the current population of 193,000. It's actually much less than 1%. I think we just use 1% as an easy barometer for those that are not Carol Vorderman or Rachel Riley, and maths is maybe more of a challenge than it is for me. As we tried to simplify it, so it's actually less than 1%. And I think Councillor Smith, just in summing up here before I go to next steps, is quite right to say that actually how would you consult on people that might turn up to a dust cart once a year? The other thing to bear in mind, and there were also some comments made that this is going to cause more car journeys. Well, actually, if you sit and watch the freighter service in action, people are turning up with cars and unloading them into the back of a dust cart with stuff that should be at the recycling centre. You know, they're plant pots. And I actually have known, David and I will know, David will know a very good resident in Mile End who's very passionate about recycling. She was taking stuff out the back of a dust cart and upcycling it because she said, why are you putting that in there? It's going to go to landfill. So she actually took some of it because she spotted it and took it home and upcycled it. And that's, for me, a prime example that I think this service is not being used correctly. And I think staff have got the same view. So we've obviously, I mean, there was an allegation in here that we didn't consult with staff. How would I have just read you all those facts if we've not spoken to staff? And then the final comment is that this service is paid for by overtime. And we struggle to get staff to actually want to work on this service on a weekend because they deserve family time. So the majority of time we're having to use agency staff, which obviously comes at a higher cost. So that also needs to be borne in mind. However, I do take on board all feedback, and using my judgment, I have looked at a possible alternative that still delivers cost savings, but also in the areas that need it most, leave some form of service in place. And I'm happy to talk about that now, if that's the appropriate time, or I'm happy to take any questions on any of the facts that I've outlined so far.
Let's see if cabinet members have anything else they want to ask Martin or comment to make to Martin on this. If not, then Pam, please.
I think some of I appreciate the question and also the full response. I think probably some of the heat could have been taken out of this further down the line, but I just wanted to come back on that question of whether we should have a consultation policy as opposed to a set of consultation guidelines, because I personally would prefer a set of consultation guidelines for precisely the reason as Martin suggested, but and that Cabinet retains discretion as to when a consultation is required.
Thank you. That's very crisply said. That's agreed. Pam's saying so in my ear, and that feels absolutely right to me. Then it helps everybody on the way you've just described it, Pam. Julie, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll look forward to hearing what your proposals are, Martin. I suppose, representing the most deprived ward in the borough, I understand entirely the task we have before us in terms of making budget savings, and we're all acutely aware of that. But, we're also committed to supporting people that are in poverty and struggling with the cost of living crisis and our deprived communities. So, I'm looking forward to hearing if you have come up with any amendments that actually might support those particular residents that I know we'd all want to support.
Thank you very much. I mean, let's just to be clear, and I know we know this, we're on shared ground. Actually, across all the parties here, people want to make life easier where we're able to do it. And it's a juggling act when you're going through difficult times. And we'll get to the steps ahead in just a minute. I want to just give the opportunity, which they're entitled to our three speakers, if they wanted to add a final remark before I close this and go to Martin on the next step. Dennis, please.
Can I clarify, Leader, in view of the comments made by Councillor Smith? The scrutiny panel was scrutinising a city council decision, city council portfolio holder. We were not scrutinising the county council. If members wish to have external bodies giving evidence to the scrutiny panel, I am absolutely happy to do that. But on this occasion, Councillor Lissimore, who was conducting the presentation on behalf of the call-in councillors, was appearing as a city councillor delivering the call-in, and it would have been confusing in my view if she'd then flipped over into being deputy portfolio holder for waste at the county council and started giving evidence, sort of expert evidence on what the county council was doing. So if colleagues on the panel wish to have external people come along and give evidence, I think we should welcome that, leader, but it has to be done properly. And if we want a representative from the county council to come along and explain what their policy is in this area on any of the issues that the scrutiny panel was looking at, then that is the way it should have been done. Not asking on the fly a city councillor giving evidence suddenly to take on a different role and start giving evidence rather than stating the purpose of the call-in. If I erred, I apologise, but I think one has to have a degree of discipline about how evidence is to be given to the panel in an unconfusing manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I understand that point. I would bear with the observation, which is that I found myself in those two arenas, and I, like others, will draw on whatever experience I have to hand. I think that's more usually the way, but I understand the formal point. That's noted. Thank you very much indeed. Right, there's no others stepping forward. Then Martin, would you just walk through what your reflections have been and what would happen next?
Yeah, thank you. And there is just a point I wanted to say about Essex County Council. They were consulted or requested to comment on this proposal, and we chased it up and received nothing. We didn't have any adverse comments because there were correlations also made between an increase in fly tipping, removal of this service, and then of course the booking service at all recycling centres, which of course is nothing to do with this decision, but that was referenced, and Essex did not respond despite being asked for comment. So we did reach out and consult with Essex and received nothing as well. So that's just wanted to clarify that point, as that did come up at the scrutiny panel. And the point Councillor Smith made was around what consultation was actually carried out for the booking service, and as I understand it, there was no consultation ever carried out by Essex County Council. So anyway, there we go. Anyway, reflecting and moving forwards, we still need to have a couple of objectives met here. Okay, and that's what I've tried to do. So the first thing is we still have a budget allocation reduction to meet. That's objective one. I believe this proposal will move us very much still close to the £25,000 saving. And secondly, it will also leave in place some form of freighter service for the areas that most need it in Colchester and most likely to have no vehicle. And let's cover that off. So if you're going to make such a proposal, then it has to be data-led. And Mrs. Donnelly, our excellent chief executive, made reference to our research team. So we reached out to the research team, not to ask them about how we consult or what the policy should or shouldn't be, because at the moment that's down to what's in the Constitution, and there is something in the Constitution about consultation, because that was discussed at the scrutiny panel as well. So consultation is in the Constitution, okay, but judgment is that not every single decision taken goes out for consultation, otherwise nothing would ever get done. And I'm sure there's a raft of examples, but anyway, we're not dwelling on that at the moment. We're talking about what we can do with this service. So what we are going to do is, or it's certainly my proposal if you agree it, we will keep in a service in the areas of Colchester that most need it in the same format that is currently provided. And if I do that, this will mean that I can then deliver that service for £7,218.90p. Therefore still making 2/3 savings, and therefore to try and find a £7,218.90p saving elsewhere is more palatable. The bigger the figure, the more difficult it is. And this is where you get into the conversation of who do I make redundant? And I'm sorry to use that example, but that's the fact of the matter. that is what you are now talking about. You are talking about reducing people's jobs and reducing frontline services. That's the conversation that councils are having. Okay, but without running alarm, no one's losing their job on this proposal. But that is what we're proposing cost-wise. Now, how are we going to deliver that? Well, looking at the data, we've looked at the areas of highest deprivation and lowest income, and there is a criteria that we've come up with to propose the areas that we would like to therefore use to determine where this service actually will continue to be delivered. And based on criteria, which is extremely strict, it isn't just my ward likes this, so we'll have the service. There's none of that. This is data driven, purely on the facts. We are proposing that the service will remain in Grinstead, Hawthorne Avenue, and Juniper Way. So in 3 locations, because Hawthorne Avenue is a long road and it calls at 2. We're talking about it remaining in 3 areas in Beerchurch. So that's Queen Elizabeth, Weathersfield and Maple Way. We're talking about it remaining at 2 locations in Old Heath and Hive, which is Barn Hall, Starlem Road and Speedwell Road. And then in Shrub End, we're talking about it remaining in Littlefield Road. Now, all of those locations are determined by those factors earlier. It's not that that's the great location the crews want to turn up to. That's based on deprivation and income and the potential need for the service. We've also proposed keeping it in Newtown and Christchurch, and that is Port Lane, Barrington Road and Winnock Road. And then in terms of Highwoods, we're proposing just keeping it in Chinook because that's the only area that meets that criteria. And finally, we're talking about keeping it in St Anne's and St John's, in Brinkley Crescent and in Goring Road. And then we're also talking about Tiptree in Walnut Tree Way. We're talking about Stanway in Wheatfield Road. We're also then talking again about Coates Hutton Road in Shrub End. And we're also talking Rural North. There is serious deprivation in Rural North, and we're talking about Mount Bures, Lexton Road in West Burgh and Parsons Field in Dedham. So they're all the areas which still cover quite a vast area of Colchester that obviously people could travel to if needed, but obviously this is designed to meet the needs as outlined and described. So I think the 2 objectives that I'm trying to meet, and I think this ticks the box, is 1, the financial saving, and 2, to try and deliver some form of service in those areas of Colchester where it's most needed. And that is the proposal that I put to Cabinet tonight as an alternative, and I welcome feedback.
Thank you, Martin. It's very comprehensive. Let's take this no longer round than we need to, but let's just see who's got a strong view. Adam, I know you wanted to speak, and then Mark, and I'll go further if we need. Mark.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'll try not to take up too much time. But just initially on the decision-making process here, I think that both Councillor Goss and Councillor Willetts made good points on this. I think that ultimately this is a judgment for portfolio holders, and that whilst it might be useful to have some guidance laid out, the call-in procedure is exactly the process that we have for anybody that doesn't feel like they've been consulted, and it certainly feels like it has worked its way through here. There is often a lot of hot air around call-in procedures, as has been noted, but I feel like we've got to a good place on this, and certainly I absolutely take the points on consultation. I think we can all reflect maybe whether, if we can't consult with all the residents, we might be able to consult with the councillors in the wards affected, so that we can achieve a consensus. But I'd like to thank Councillor Goss for listening, particularly to those councillors that made representations to him on this issue, and I think that exactly is the constructive way to deal with this. And I think that he's come up with, and officers who've worked on this have come up with the right sort of solution in the current times. And just finally, I think that we had a difficult budget decision to make this year, and there are going to be further difficult decisions as we start to implement some of those changes in how the council operates. And one of the things that I have said to members of the Labour group, and I will say to any councillor who's listening now, is that if you've got a problem with a decision coming down the line, you need to find a solution, and you're not happy with it, you need to find a different alternative, because we're going to have to make some very difficult savings in this council's budget. So whether it's on the budget, whether it's adopting the budget, whether it's adopting an economic strategy, whether it's adopting local council tax support, if you haven't got an alternative, then I think you need to go away and do your homework. Thank you very much.
Mark.
Thank you, David. Some very good points there, Adam. Thank you. I very much agree with. I think just to remind everybody that the national financial management of the country, the macro economics are affecting us, and that's why we are having to make these tough decisions. It's not because we want to. We're having to be very adult and ensure the longer term sustainability of these services. I do want to thank the officers for working with Martin to find a solution, and like Adam, just sort of the tone of Adam's point is the same as mine. I actually am really appreciative of Martin's approach here. He's outlined the clear evidence, the clear reasoning. I didn't have the opportunity to zoom into the meeting on Friday, but I appreciate the discussions that have been had there, and I really think Martin, as portfolio holder, has done a great job to find this solution with officers, to listen to the feedback. And it's actually how we work with scrutiny. And Dennis will know as chair that we took on board some of the comments to do with the budget. And that is how a good council works. We put forward our best options, and then we take feedback on them. So in a sense, that is democratic consultation. If it isn't going out completely to the public on every decision, it's using the representatives around the council chamber and cross-party. So I think this is really a good compromise. It focuses on those key areas of need and deprivation. And as Julie outlined in Greenstead, I think that's important, that service is kept. That will make a difference, and across the patches that you have used the data and the evidence to analyse, Martin. So I think this is a really fair compromise, and I welcome the fact that Martin has listened and this administration continues to listen to scrutiny and to councillors across the chamber. Thank you.
Anything else from other colleagues? All right, then we'll close. But I'd just like to make the decision, confirm the decision made, which we'll do in just a moment. I just want to thank speakers tonight and the panel through its chair for at least ensuring there was a conversation. I know that Councillor Goss was looking at this as it happened at that time, but it's been helpful to have had the views of others. I take away, as we've confirmed already, some sort of learning points about whether we need to go further on guidance, for example, on consultation. And I also hear the words around councillors in wards affected. I think that's really useful for us to reinforce, because we know that some members can feel bypassed by decision making. They can, whether it's section 106 or perhaps matters like this. So I think there's a useful reinforcement for the collective political and officer team to ensure that when we're working things up, that we, to the extent that we can, that we take account of the local view. But I want to reinforce the thanks of fellow cabinet members to Councillor Goss as well for being so thoughtful and measured around the evidence and the next steps and the alternatives put forward. We're content to support this. Agreed. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to members contributing, all three of you. Our next item, as I'm corrected, will be item 7.1 on the Colchester Strategic Plan delivery plan. Now, this is a really significant piece of work. It goes to the heart of good governance and promise keeping, that we need to do better than sometimes we have. In terms of filling the gap, he says, watching water spill across the table, to our chief record keeper. To fill the gap between a strategic plan set of honourable objectives and the means to deliver them. So this document is the linkage. It provides in headline form a real set of possibilities and deliverables and the funding allocated beyond that in the core budget. I think it's hugely helpful for showing that we are, please do not watch Richard here. This is distracting anybody online, I imagine. But it is the essential linkage as recommended to us by the LGA, and it deserves your and our support accordingly. I'll draw out just a couple of points, if I may, and I'll go to colleagues. The first is that part of the drivers for this have been very much cross-party, in the same way in which the strategic plan has been set before, agreed either unanimously or by clear majority most recently. What we're doing here, as I say, is the bridge between where we are now and year by year, those objectives as supported widely across the council chamber, and reinforced by a consultation exercise, which I think was really significant. Over 1,100 replies, some lengthy supplementary exchanges and resident groups, a process which we're going to learn from. And what we do here starts to address the kinds of issues raised as amongst the most important for our residents around the environment, around pride in place in terms of improvement of the city centre. So I'm going to stop there. I'll ask members of the cabinet if they wish to sort of draw out particular points in some of the delivery plan, but I recommend it accordingly to you, and we'll close them when you've had the opportunity to add some extra flesh to the description I've given you as set out in the paper. Who would like to speak to this? Adam.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think what we've delivered here is exactly the sort of focused delivery plan that we need to achieve the objectives set out in the strategic plan. And I'm also confident that we've done the best that we can in terms of aligning this to the budget as well. And I think the key thing here in the years ahead as this is implemented is that the council sticks to this plan. What is in the plan is what we need to deliver, and that we are not going to be able to deliver everything we ever wanted to, because of the financial position that the country is in. But if I just speak to a couple of the economic highlights, I think that we've got a real opportunity here as we take the future of Colchester forward as a city. So I certainly think that working with all our partners is really key in that, particularly groups like the Business Improvement District and the North Essex Economic Board in delivering some of that, some of those projects like the Shared Prosperity Fund, which I think will have real benefits to the local economy. And in particular, also, I think delivering on the city centre master plan and the town deal projects, that's £40 million of investment in Colchester, and the sort of investment that other places don't have, and the sort of investment that will unlock further opportunities for the city as well. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Colleagues? Julie?
Yeah, I think the plan obviously gives us a blueprint for our future actions, and just in terms of housing, you know, high aspirations there to deliver against the needs of our local community. But the challenge is a big one. We have 275 households that are homeless and in temporary accommodation, and 3,000 on our housing needs register. So the framework we've got set out in this plan is about trying to meet the needs of those individuals and others that may come to us for housing. It is a clear plan and it's a costed plan. So yeah, it's beholden us, a cabinet, to make sure we see this delivered as successfully as we can.
Thank you very much, Julie. Mark.
Thank you, David. I think this is a really good balance between ambition and setting a vision, working with partners, whether that be culturally to continue to celebrate this city and its history, whether it's to tackle inequalities, it backs that with principle and with money. And as Julie referenced, I think housing as well, and continuing the focus on keeping our residents as safe as possible, giving them the springboard to a happier and healthy life. So I think it finds that balance between ambition and vision, but also giving money to complete practical steps and deliver on our aspirations. So we've got a very clear strategic plan and now a delivery plan. So I think it finds the right balance. And it even goes down to such detail as refreshing and putting money into our play parts. So something at such a level like that, compared to some of the wider vision, tackling inequalities and working with partners. So from top to bottom, I think this will deliver, and I'm glad to see it. And I'm glad to see the funding itemized against it as well, which makes it tangible and deliverable. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from other colleagues? No, then I'll just close by thanking you for your support on this. There's a huge amount of work that lies behind this, and there's a large number of steps to be taken now that we've agreed it. And some of the fruit of that work is going to take a while to emerge. So working with the county council, and that's becoming a hugely fruitful conversation itself around Team Colchester. The way we embed working with our officers together in a seamless kind of way, that is our best prospect, frankly, of bringing material regeneration at pace, not just through the town deal and the Levelling Up Fund, which are in themselves fantastic, but the wider and deeper work that will require close working relationships and some of the investments that's signalled in this report. So there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot to do. I would soberly acknowledge that these investments from one-off funds are decisions we've made thoughtfully, because they are essential if we are to maintain that balance between robustness fiscally and our need to invest to deliver change in the organisation, including resetting our capital programme and recovering the state of our estate. So there's a great deal beneath the surface on this. We will bring this forward to members and to the public by stage. But this is, as described by others, a blueprint for our future. And it's the first time we've done this under any administration in this more progressive, more robust, more open kind of way. So we're setting out our stall here. And as a number of you have said now, whether it's large or small, it's great to see arts grants, for example, reconfirmed. Councillor Cox, I'm sure will agree, so will others, I hope. And the macro business of how we work with county and other external partners, all of that is here or signalled in here. So I'll stop there. I thank you very much for the work that lies behind getting to this point. There's a huge amount that's needed to do that. And I go to the recommendation, which is to agree the strategic delivery plan for 23-24, including allocation of planned delivery reserve and transformation funding to deliver against the strategic plan goals. It is, of course. Thank you very much indeed. We read the alternative sentence. Any other observations? If not, are we content? Thank you very much indeed. The next item is devolution and proposals for North Essex authorities, and we have a speaker on that, which I think is Councillor Pearson. Chris, would you please come forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Before I turn to the item, there were just a couple of things I wanted to say. One, to wish everyone, I know it's a bit late in the day, but a very good International Women's Day. It's good to see the gender balance around the table this evening, which is fairly good. We're not quite there yet, but we're very close, which is to be commended. The other thing I wanted to say was just how well our officers, the police and other services, as well as the councillors who were involved yesterday, did with the royal visit, and to say that it appeared to me and it appeared to the residents that I spoke with that it went very, very successfully, and certainly it put Colchester City on the map. Great deal of media attention, and that can only be good for the city going forward. Which leads me to the devolution suggestions that are in the paper this evening. I know that the members generally have only just really been appraised of what's afoot. There are obviously some potential benefits to either level 2 or level 3 devolution for Greater Essex, whatever that might look like. Obviously, sustainable transport is something that we would all welcome. More affordable housing is another thing that I think we could all sign up to around this table. And joined up thinking around health and well-being is another potential benefit. I just want us to be a little bit cautious, though, and inclusive in terms of moving forward. I know, Leader, that you've been involved in some discussions, and I know that our Chief Executive has been involved in early discussions. But I think going forward, it's absolutely crucial that we take every member of the council with us as we go forward. So we need to ensure that all members are appraised of the steps that are taken over the coming 12 months or so. I recognise that there are some advantages, but I think we also need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls, and the suggested monetary gain of £1 billion over 30 years should be seen for what it is. It's not a panacea. 30 million quid a year, by the time we're getting into the second and third decade of that money, starts to look fairly minimal. Even if inflation comes down to 4 or 5%, that will be the equivalent of somewhere at between £5 and £10 million a year, spread over whatever the size of Greater Essex is. So it's not a financial panacea. And I think we just need to be mindful of that. I note the comments around form following function. It's an interesting one for me, having studied organisations as I have. I'm often not sure whether function should follow form or form should follow function. I think there's an argument to be made for either. And my intrigue with the paper that's before us is whether or not Greater Essex turns out to be 2 Greater Essexes or 1 Greater Essex with a level 2 or a level 3 authority. So I say I would just ask, Leader, that we ensure going forward that all members of the authority are kept fully appraised. I know that ultimately, and this is the disappointment for me, we don't have any real skin in the game, I think is a term that's often used, but we will be done too. And hopefully we will participate in ensuring that we are also being done by.
Thank you very much, Chris. That will reduce the need for me to do much of an introduction to the paper. Everybody else will be pleased to hear. Let me just pick up the points and walk through them. I'll see if there's any other views from colleagues. And I think, to be frank, I'll just take any other exchanges on the paper, because what you've touched on is, from my perspective, is the heart, the essence of it all. So I think, first of all, in terms of information, you're right. The amount of information that's gone to members is not what I would like it to be, but that's just a reflection of the last few months of where we've been at. So for anybody listening to this, say again, step 1 and a bit of 10. What we've had to do is really, to be frank, and it gets to your other points, and build some confidence in each other, that this is a process that could bring real benefit. And it's only when you dive into the ways in which at the moment life is structured, government life is structured across the greater Essex, does one sort of see the logics of that, and where the lack of devolution from government, and this is only about devolution from government. It's not about a dispersal of existing powers or a loss of anything here for culture. This is can be critiqued that it's minimal, as you've said, one of your second or third points, but it's real and it's extra. It's taken us some months to walk through, Pam and I with colleagues. And I have said this to us, I'll say it again. I remember joining this very large room, Chancellors and Chamber, and sitting there, and I'm not a jaundiced person, feeling a bit jaundiced about it. Oh, here we go again. But actually, it's turned out to be really fruitful. It's been turned out to be to find natural allies, which is most of those in that room, chief execs and leaders, because it comes down to our duties to our residents. And I think what's been really compelling for me is that when you start to look at whether it's skills or the economy or possibilities of doing transport in an integrated way, you start to realise just frankly how inefficient and how fractured local government is if it seeks to do better than just look at its own narrow sense of place. And so that process has taken a little while. Pam and I have shared some notes. Pam's mentioned it in a briefing. We've got Tom Walker, who's the lead, in to talk to all members. So my promise, and it's probably my final point, but I'll add a little bit more. We are going to do that. So we'll be as inclusive as possible as we go through each of those steps. Now, your point about the size of the prize, I completely get it. But if you look at some of the deals that have been struck, they can be significantly higher than 30 million a year. Some of them being a 17 million plus. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's not what Tom Walker would say. But £8 billion, even if it's over half a lifetime, is worth having. However, it's trickled down. The bigger prize, I personally think, will not be with the money, it will be the way in which you can transform the ways in which we're working. And I think watching those exchanges and linkages between leaders and chief execs and counterparts, you could see where that could really set alight some of those possibilities. It's always possibilities until it's turned into pragmatic arrangements. But I really think that there's a rich prize here, multi-dimensional way in which we could have influence, even if we are not, as you said. We don't have to be clear about skin in the game. We do have skin in the game. What we do, what happens and how it happens really matters. We don't make the decision under legislation, just to be clear for everybody else. Now that's down to unitaries and then Essex. But I want to sort of pay a public tribute. Kevin Bentley, I know that some won't like me doing that. I know, because the leader of the county council has so far, and I believe it to be absolutely true, because he's made that commitment in my hearing in front of all sorts of audiences, and he's shown it. He knows that for this to truly work, whatever the formality of the legislation and the grip it has on who makes decisions, the best models by a country mile are ones in which there are voices from everywhere, from all of the districts. So what lies ahead is working out that governance arrangement. The prize is clear. £1 billion is not stiff at it, might be too, depending on the level and depending on government's response, all of that. The prize is significant in other ways, as just described. The governance piece, I get it, is really critical. We will see, but I am comforted that the engagement is absolutely true. And it's best sort of common sense that if you really want this to last, you carry people with you. So far, so good is all I would sort of say. I think that covers most of your points, Chris. I've touched on the inclusiveness of what I would want us to do in the future. Whoever's in this chair will want the same thing. I think there's widespread support for this. Now, we're not in any sense disadvantaging the people of Colchester. There will be advantage from this, whether it's level 2 or level 3. Level 3 is politically less comfortable for some. That's with a mayor, for those listening. But again, it depends on the government's arrangements. There's no question that we're all combined authorities have extra clout, they have extra resource and a greater voice. So I'm really comfortable and recommending it to my cabinet colleagues. I'm really grateful that you've given me the opportunity to respond to your challenges, because in my view, they're the central ones. I'll stop at that, Chris. Do you come back if you've got a response to it, then I'll go to Adam and see who else would like to talk to this.
Yes, very, very quickly. Thank you, David. I'm going to be slightly cheeky and suggest that if we do ultimately end up with a level 3 Greater Essex, be that north or the whole of the county, that we push very heavily for the mayor to be based in Britain's oldest and newest city.
I love that. I didn't respond to your one or two points, one or two authorities. I think in terms of the baseline of population and economic substance, I think there is a question here. It may well be that the cooperative nature of North and South being stronger between them rather than as a whole necessarily might drive this parts of the government's arrangement, but that lies ahead. I'll ask Pam at the close if she's got anything else to add, if she wouldn't mind. Adam.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Chris, because I think you're right in saying that we need to ensure that we take all councillors with us, but also that residents see the advantage of any of this work. And it's quite clear that all parties nationally are now saying that they believe that more power should be moved from Whitehall down to local communities. And so I think it's inherent on us as local politicians to try and mould whatever deals or arrangements there are so that they are to the benefit of our local residents. And as has been identified, there might be, an element of uncomfortableness with some of the structures that will go in place. But when I look at where other places have had a devolution deal, what they've been able to sort out is things like buses, which we know are an absolute mess here in Essex because we have no control over bus companies and no control over routes and no control over fares and no control over how people access them. But that is, if we only got that out of a devolution deal, I would take it tomorrow, whoever was in charge, frankly, genuinely. But there is also potential on infrastructure, there's potential on skills. The whole of the skill sector has been absolutely hollowed out locally. But if we got some of that money brought down to Greater Essex and then down to North Essex and then into Colchester, we might be able to really do something for young people and for adults on new skills and the skills that people are going to need in the future. I think there's a potential to open up a conversation locally about, is there anything that we want off of Essex County Council? Is there anything that we want to devolve even further down to local neighbourhoods in the city as well? But any of this has got to be driven by, what is the benefit for residents? And we might not have. So I'd say we've got skin in the game. We might not have a veto. We might not have a decision. Might not have a vote on the decision making. But I think if we're positive and we are constructive, we're more likely to have a seat at the table. And certainly, all the work that we've been doing in Team Colchester with the County Council certainly suggests that they see us as one of the best partners in the county, if not the best.
Thank you. That's so well said, including the latter point, to be frank. All these things connect. I went to London today to support the county and at a parliamentary set piece around levelling up over the last year. Started 18 months of work for the last year in which they've been by helping us. And we've been helping ourselves to get success wherever we can, because that's the reality of how government now works. Beyond core funding, it's pitch, bid, win or lose. Winning is better. And there is a deep agenda that the county are following, which is in our interest to ensure that we're as aligned to as possible, so we frankly are heard, can influence can argue for the benefit of our residents and secure the very best deal we can. So this closer working is half a step. Team Colchester working on planning and master planning issues is half a step towards that devolution work that lies beyond this moment in time. You know, it's going to come through in the next year, 18 months, whenever it does. So not all our fellow members get this or will like it. But this is why these things are all linked. The same actually with the difficult conversations we're having around TCB. You know, success depends on delivery, and success depends on the degree to which we can see the advantage of that whole picture as well as it's slice by slice. And thank you, Chris, for stimulating a good conversation. Can I ask anything else from other members? I'll go to Mark and then to Pam.
Thank you, David. I think we all have different views and previous experiences of this, and I've definitely had experience around the table as a previous leader in these discussions, and sometimes they've seemed fruitless. And also, I'm sometimes skeptical when these devolution offers are driven by people who are less likely to give away control. So what is it that they want? Why is it that they're giving away certain things? What else do they want? Or how much funding comes with it, which is a key thing. So I share some of the skepticism of you, Chris. But there's some good points made by Adam that I did read through the documents and think actually there is potential there. There are good things. Buses, absolutely agree. I was thinking about that. Decent public transport, perhaps publicly led in some ways, what I'd like to see through a combined authority. So there are positives, but I am a skeptic of the devolution in practice under certain controls. In principle, I believe in it. So it's a real difficult one because I do believe it's the right kind of thing to do. And a lot of the level 3 things work for me. What doesn't work for me is a mayor of such a vast area. I mean, I would work with whatever system I'm under. So don't rule out running for mayor at some point, Mark, is what I'm thinking. But no, I think that power consolidated. I mean, devolution, what's the point of passing down power then actually putting it into just one person? So you've got to think about the principles of that. I don't like the consolidation of power. I like the passing down of power. But enough said on that. I think there's been some good points around the table. Thank you, Chris, and others who've spoken. Tentatively happy for you to carry on, David, talking, but with a skeptical eye on things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Just briefly, I mean, the historic Greater Essex was, of course, the kingdom of the East Saxons, from where we get our name. So there is precedent for this. And I think that needs to be brought in. I also would agree that the mayor should be based here, should there be a mayor, for lots of reasons. But I think in terms of the comms piece, we do need a comms piece on this for residents. Just a simple something. What difference does devolution make? What would it make? What difference would it make? What is the claim that's being made here? And I think for me, around the principle of devolution, I'm personally quite committed to devolved powers and participatory governance. But I do think that because local government delivers the vast majority of public services, it needs meaningful funding settlements. And I don't want to see that continued hollowing out of local government go unremarked, really. I think because there are some interesting ways forward on this, but I would broadly support what we're doing here. So thank you for your work on it so far.
Thank you very much, Pam, and thank you, Mark and Adam, too. Any other comments or views, please? Awesome. I was going to come to you at the end, Pam. Nothing else, then I'll go to Pam. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to speak on this, because just to give some reassurance, I've sat alongside David now for many months. We'll be doing that again tomorrow morning at Chelmsford, I believe, to make sure that we protect Colchester's interests at all times. I just want to make reference to document in front of you, page 149, Appendix B, which I think Councillor Pearson could give some comfort about the degree of preparation that's underway for a deal such as this. or not. It will stand us in good stead, and that's the work across North Essex councils. And I've only put one thing on my wall in my study at home, and it's this map, because I think this map says a great deal about the strength and opportunity and influence of North Essex across Essex, representing over 1 million people, 8 different authorities, working together really quite well for the common good of North Essex. So I want to make sure that you are aware, as all colleagues are aware, of the strength of work that's going on across those authorities and the links between the appropriate leaders and chief execs. So when the time comes, if the time comes, we're ready to make sure that that place-based perspective is very clearly articulated. Thank you.
Chris, you have a final word, dear boy.
I'm more than happy, thank you, Leader. And I've looked at this document on a number of occasions now, so I could actually visualize the graphic that you were suggesting you've got on your wall, and I think it's very important. It's a good graphic to follow, Pam. So I share your positiveness. I just look forward to seeing that. But I think the comments that have been made around the table this evening about ensuring that all members are up to speed and up to date with what's happening, but also equally importantly, the residents of Colchester as well are following what's happening are key to this.
Thank you. Then from my perspective, we're given that a good shake. The points made are absolutely taken. We're not naive about this. Let's not doubt that we're not there yet for a start. And there's no question that any form of combined authority, personality, let's be frank, will still have an important role to play. But strong relationships between the local authorities at a number of levels are there. They're being reinforced, and to be frank, that's one of those things that should give us all confidence that we have something of real substance here. Skepticism can be our friend, Mark. Absolutely get that. We'll bear that in mind. And Pam, you all remark too that if the way ahead turns out to be hollow out but offer a prize alongside hollowing out, that will become plain. And we're not at that point yet, but it's close, let's be honest, given what's happened over the last 10 years or so. So this has to work as a whole, alive to the core budgets and responsibilities that government places on us, and the way and the style they work. But the tide's moving. It's happening across the country, and we should play our full part. Best chance, as Adam said, of having influence and a measure of control of what happens, and what advantage we get for it for the residents of Colchester will depend on our attitudes and how we're seen to play. And we play constructively, but we're not, as I say, foolish about it. We'll share as we go. We'll set challenges as we go. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chris, and for the conversation, Pam too, for all your work behind this. The decisions recommended, this is not a final position. It's not a decision on devolution, as the paper says. This is about us noting where we and our counterparts are, and to agree to progress the current work to the next stage. I won't read out all that's set out in 2.4, but that's the principle of it. As a whole, are we content? Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to item 9.
8, Chair.
Oh, beg your pardon, I'm doing so well, 8 too. Yeah, I used to be able to count. I was once upon a time. Oh, Nick finds out. Too much paper. Oh, that's right. 153. See if my page is the same as yours, Pam. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I did read all this, almost. You could I, thank you. Oh, that's good. That's news. Remember to self, check the pack against what else you've got, right?
No, that's just one.
Shall I introduce the report,
would you?
leader?
Thank
That's
you. I just
absolutely
wanna watch
fine.
you, Julie.
It's okay. The recommendations are set out on page 153, 2.1 to approve the proposal and sign off the memorandum of understandings for the LAHF. And I'll just speak a little bit about this. Leader, our work in terms of supporting refugees has gathered pace over time. We're proud to be a borough of sanctuary and are pleased to be able to support those fleeing danger or persecution and to support those individuals that have come from Afghanistan that supported our troops during that conflict, the Afghan interpreters that have come to this country. We also know that there's been a tremendous amount of goodwill from host families providing accommodation for our Ukrainian refugees. This proposal has been offered to us by the Department of Levelling Up and Housing and Communities in terms of the fact that we have been identified as a council that has a significant amount of refugees and is offering funding for us to provide additional accommodation. And there's two elements of this, 20 homes and then some additional requirement to provide some larger properties for those people that need a larger home. So I'm recommending to Cabinet that we do proceed with this because it will increase our stock. As I said earlier, we've got 275 homeless households in temporary accommodation. Actually, I think it's slightly above that figure now. I think it's 284, something in that nature. 3,000 households on the housing needs register. And we need to be doing all we can to provide additional accommodation to those that need it in the borough. And this is a proposal to provide some additional accommodation. So yes, you have the report in front of you, Chair, now that you've found it. And the recommendation is set out as I described.
Thank you. That's suitably wounding, but accepted, Julie.
It is International
To
Women's Day after all.
To hear the words whispered in my ear, that's the old pack, which would explain why I was on 141, but there we are. All right, look, thank you very much, Julie. That's succinctly put. Mark.
Thank you. Just as succinct, really, to support what Julie has said, I think this is good to see finally a more sustainable footing in how we can actually house those people fleeing from these places of conflict. And I support what Julie has said about Colchester being very welcoming. Those who have opened their doors to Ukrainian refugees, the support we've had from Refugee Action Colchester that are now slightly differently named, but I can't get it in the right order. So I want to put on record there thanks to them as well. And this is a much more sustainable footing. So I welcome that from government and I welcome Julie outlining our approach. And I welcome the way in which Colchester embraces it. And it's quite different to actually the recent way in which the Home Secretary has been really cruel and I think reminiscent of bad days, past days in history, and we don't want to go down that line. So I welcome this more positive step. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else from other colleagues? No, well, thank you very much. This is great paper. It reinforces our capacity, limited though it is, to give help where we can. I think it's not a political point, it's just a practical one. It is we have to continue to make sure that ministers and opinion makers understand the realities that we see in our district. We have been remarkably lucky that so many people just take Ukrainian refugees as an example, have been willing to continue to extend their help and support. That's made a big difference to the potential pressures that are still out there as the months go by. on our ability to provide housing support for those in need. So this is welcome in that context as well. Thank you very much, Judy. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, and I'd like to endorse the points made by councillor Corey. You know, the approach we have in Colchester is probably the best in Essex in terms of how we work with refugee action. We'll continue to call them refugee action. Maria will be, you know, heads that organise up in an exemplary fashion. And we're grateful to have her doing that work for us here in Colchester and the partnership we have with her.
Thank you. Well, the recommendations as described are in paper are supported. Agreed. Thank you very much indeed.
It's me again, actually.
It is you again.
All right, okay, it's me again, I'm afraid. So this is about efficiency and the speed of decision making, leader. And it's asking for cabinet approval to delegated authority to me in terms of the award of contracts going forward. The alternative to us not approving this is that every decision will have to come to cabinet for approval, which will obviously delay some of that decision making. And we've got quite a few coming up in terms of energy improvements, electrical installation contract, asbestos removal and pitch roof replacements coming along stream in terms of our housing investment programme and doing those pieces of work. So I'd ask for cabinet support. The recommendation is set out on page 157, 2.1.
Thank you for the page numbers. Irrelevant to me, but it will be helpful to some others. Any extra views or commentary to add from colleagues? No. I mean, you've got a huge, say out loud, you've got a hugely difficult and challenging area of business, Julie, and there's no small matter having delegated authority, because I know that you'll exercise that as others will really thoughtfully. So, of course, it has our full support. Colleagues, agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you very much. I thank you, Richard, for that copy at the end. I'll ask you before the meeting next time. Right, look, helping your chair through it, we are getting through it, that's good, right. And having a good conversation along the way, which does matter for the democracy we tend to represent, right. So 9.1, you choose your page or your pack. Request for delegated authority award recycling materials contract, Martin.
Very quickly, we currently have a contract with James Hayes for recycling most of our dry recyclates. That contract was extended by a year last year. We now, by law, have to put this out to procurement. And therefore, the report is requesting that we delegate that authority to the Chief Operating Officer to get on and get that procurement work underway. Not the first time I've done this work, and in fact I think it's the second time since being the portfolio holder, which shows how long I've been doing it now. So I would just ask cabinet under executive summary points 1.1 and 1.2 to go with the recommended decision under 2.1, which is to delegate the authority to the COO, which of course is Richard Block on this occasion.
Yes, and obviously in consultations, again, the usual form. Any views, comments, or anything to add? No, then again, that's, thank you for the exercise. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Right. On page 167, there's an extract from the minutes of the policy panel meeting on the 11th of January. Chief Executive just anxiously checking. In case there should be a third pack. Who knows? Okay. Let me just open it to the floor. Does anybody have a view on this before we get to the central conclusion? Now, having attended the meeting, vice chairs in the far end of the room, bless him. There's something to be said about the way the policy panel is meeting, and I keep saying I want to reinforce it. This is one of the better routes we have for ensuring that members feel engaged before we make policy decisions, or when inevitably they're in train to offer a view on them before the next stage or the next step. So there's a flow of ideas, conversation, some challenge, And this is one more example. So what we have here is a thoughtful note reflecting thoughtful conversations. And the chair has agreed that a fair way of describing would be that this is good advice and a good cross check. It's not a derailing of what's going on at the Environment and Sustainability Panel or under the direction of the portfolio holders, but it was a helpful conversation. I know officers felt that, and a useful cross check as such. So the recommendation is that we continue to work with the Environment Sustainability Panel, which of course we would, to identify if gaps remain in the council's approach towards meeting its targets relating to fight climate change, and we're identifying to identify how best to address them. So this is kind of just asking us to understand where we are collectively. You know, there's a value in that as well. It's not a requirement for us to make a decision as such. So is there any comment on the paper or on the recommendation? If not, do we agree? Thank you very much. This is so exciting. Page 171. Procurement Director Award Contracts for Merchant Services and Water Supply, which I think is down to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yes, this paper is quite straightforward. I'll just outline the two sections that are included, and just the positives of it. I'll be succinct. So the positives to the change in contract in merchant services means that it will reduce our transactional fees, our card fees, and protect us from increases in the future as well. So it will see future efficiencies. And we expect around a £40,000 saving from this on our current use. And lastly, the banking providers are actually covering the costs of the changes and using a third party sort of project management to bring that in. So that will mean minimal impact on the current council's operations and no cost to us, which is positive. On the water supply, we do not have a contract on water. So this is a way in which we'll be more compliant with our procurement rules, and we will be going with the same provider. But with this new contract, we'll see a small saving. Every little helps of £6,000. And it will just make us, as I say, more compliant with our contractual and procurement rules. And the contract will also see the inclusion of free installation of smart meters across our water usage sites, monitoring our sites and our usage, allowing for more efficiency improvements in the future. And therefore, I think it's a positive steps on both counts, small savings and positive efficiencies going forward. That's all, Leader. Thank you.
Any questions, queries for Mark? No, in which case the recommended decisions are as described, set out in 2.1.2.2. Are we agreed? In which case we seamlessly go on to, I hope, item 12. 1. Have your say submissions. This is petitions, public statements and questions. Julie.
There's just one alteration. I'm sorry I didn't pick up it earlier, Leader. Steve Kelly, in questioning that you put that I answered, it's about the provision of vitamin D rather than vitamin B. Although he probably wants us to supply vitamin B as well, but I think he was actually referring to vitamin D.
Thank you. As Mark says, he was, and actually, you know, vitamin D makes huge sense, but it's not going to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. All right. I read this as showing that we're up to speed with the business, the obligations we take in dealing with people here. Have your say. Is it agreed? Thank you. Monitoring officer, is there anything else that we need to deal with right now?
No, Leader, there isn't. Thank you.
Can I just sort of say for the record that although we may have a further cabinet meeting in April, as we've got a date penciled in, we'll have that if that's productive for the administration of the council. But if that's not the case, I just want to take the opportunity after hear it again in April. Martin always likes to hear from me at least twice. To say a huge thank you publicly to members of the cabinet here and not here for what has been in the round of really challenging year, but to our officers as well, because we've made huge progress towards the fiscal stability and indeed opening up the gateway to ambitions and opportunities for the people of Colchester. We've played our full part. You have played your full part. And for the record, I want to say a really big thank you to you all for that. We'll close the official business for us members to hang on for a few minutes on TCB. Thank you.